Hey everyone, sorry about that. I was just making sure that I didn't have an echo, but then of course that just leads me to start this a little bit delayed. But anyways, welcome everyone to yet another Atlassian hosted live learning. We are going to be talking about Jira Advanced Roadmaps, aka plans for beginners, for project managers, for product owners, for really anybody who wants to see the big picture. This is going to be a really awesome course. If this is your first time here, feel free to drop a quick hello in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. We love just learning where everybody's from. Also, if you have any questions at any point throughout this live stream, do please let us know here in the chat. I have another person watching the chat, monitoring the chat really. And so if you have any questions, we'll be flagging those and we'll be answering your questions to the best of my ability. So, Brian, thank you so much for stopping by. Malik, thank you so much for being here. Everybody who's tuning in, again, in that chat, you can just let me know where in the world are you coming in from, and also, have you used the advanced roadmaps before? I'm very curious. Let me know. Yes, no. Have you used your advanced roadmaps before or not? So, as those chats and messages are coming in, let me share my screen and we're just going to jump into it, get started here. As I mentioned, Jira Advanced Roadmaps, aka plans, and I put this in parentheses. You'll see why when we jump into Jira. It's really for beginners, for project managers, and the like, stakeholders, executives. You're all gonna love this stuff if you haven't used the Jira Advanced Roadmap before. So let me know. Michael says he's been testing them. Sarah from Utah says she's used them before. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of insight, maybe some tips or tricks that you might not know. But this is going to be a little bit for the beginners. So we're going to kind of start at step 0 and we'll work our way through. But Sarah, Michelle, those of you that have already used the Jira Advanced Roadmaps, do ask your questions. If you have questions about something, let us know. And maybe at the end we can have a few minutes here to address some of those questions. And I will take some breaks to address those questions. All right. So everybody's trickling in. What are we going to talk about today? So obviously a jar. I'm trying to coin the term jar. I know Atlassian, from what I hear, is going to be rebranding the advanced roadmaps, the Jira advanced roadmaps jar. Right now they're called plans. There's also like advanced timelines. So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different names for just this thing. So, and then again, as I mentioned, Atlassian, I hear word on the street is rumor is that they might be even rebranding a little bit later. But we're going to be talking about jars. So we'll talk about how to create it. We'll give you like the little 411 on the timeline, the summary, and then some plan settings that you absolutely need to know to make your life a little bit easier. But before we get too far into that, who am I? Why should you listen to me? Well, my name's Alex. I'm one of the live instructors here. Don't work directly for Atlassian, but Atlassian is kind of, I guess, not really sponsoring us, but they're really endorsing us, right? They promote this and they kind of put this out on their social networks and they put us on websites and stuff. So no payment or anything like that, no monetary gains from Atlassian. So with that said, there is a QR code here that you can scan. And so my name's Alex again, as I mentioned. I do have a bachelor's in computer engineering, a master's in systems engineering, a couple of cybersecurity certifications. I've been in the Atlassian ecosystem since 2016. I am both a Jira admin and a very powerful Jira user, if you will. So I've been using the Atlassian tools for a very, very long time. I spend 12 to 14 hours almost every single day at this point in Jira, in the tool. So I know them pretty well. Some of you may be watching this and going, hey, that face looks familiar. Well, I have a YouTube channel, Tech Tutorials. And so if you want to learn more about just Jira, Confluence, all the Atlassian tools, scan that QR code, go to the ATEC channel, go subscribe over there if you haven't already. I have over 600, I think closer to 700 videos now on how to use Jira. So lots and lots and lots of great content for you over there. But here we're on the Jira Life. This is a whole other effort that my partner and I, Rodney, the Jira guy, and Nissan, have started. And so if you're on this channel and you haven't subscribed, do take a second here. This Jira Life is an up and coming Jira community. We have a live stream on August 31st. It's going to be a 10-hour live stream where we're basically going to be saying farewell to Scott Farquhar, the co-founder of Atlassian. He is retiring. He's stepping away. I don't think he's formally retiring yet, but he's retiring from Atlassian. He's stepping aside. So we're going to be doing a cool little live stream. So if you want to be stay tuned and all that, make sure you hit that bell notification. Make sure, again, click on that QR code. Follow me on LinkedIn. let me know you came from this class, and we will make sure we're connected. And then you'll be able to stay up to date with all the events happening in the Atlassian community that we're a part of. So definitely take advantage of that. And then finally, the one thing I will say, I just published a book alongside here with Jira, with the Jira guy and a couple of others. So if you're interested in our book, again, everything is in that QR code. So that's enough for the business spiel. Let's jump into creating an advanced roadmap. So a lot of people usually ask me, hey, what about the slides? Well, this is about as far as we're getting with the slides. We're only 5 minutes into this, and we're probably not going to see the slides again. We're going to go into the advanced roadmap, and we're just going to stay in there. I will maybe reference them from time to time throughout the next 55 minutes just to make sure I'm on track and not deviating too much. But I've been known from time to time to deviate from the agenda and or script. So let's jump in here. And I do want to make a quick disclaimer before we get too far. What I'm about to show you, very, very powerful stuff. But there's a huge caveat, okay? Huge. This capability, this advanced roadmap that I'm about to show you, one, I'm demonstrating it in the cloud. So if you're in data center, I do believe you have access to something called like portfolio or something like that. I don't spend too much time in data center. So you do have this capability as far as I know. And Ronnie, you can just confirm there in the chat. That'd be great. But I'm not going to show you that UI. So it should be very similar, but just keep in mind that Atlassian is consistently updating the cloud, and DC doesn't always get the same love. So things may not be in the same spot, but from a capabilities perspective, if you're on on-premise or data center versions of Jira, you should have something there. Now, so that's caveat number one, or disclaimer number one. Disclaimer number two, if you're in the cloud, right, which I'm hoping you are, this is really where we're going to shine here. This is a Jira Premium or Enterprise only feature. So if you're on the free version or on the standard versions of Jira Cloud, you will not be able to do what I'm about to show you. Okay, so keep that in mind that we are in the we're going to be taking advantage of the plans of the jar, but it's only Premium or Enterprise customers. Okay, so in the chat again, if you're having any problems, again it should be okay. But if you're trying to follow along and you're like, hey, Alex, this button doesn't work for me, that's what's going on, okay? So let's jump into it. And I'm going to start off with just what does it look like if you don't have premium, right? So this is how you will know. If you click on your plans and you are greeted with this beautiful marketing message of like, hey, try it for free, you are not on the right version of Jira. You will need to, again, promote yourself. Luckily, a 30-day promotion, or sorry, a 30-day free trial of Jira Premium is available. So you might just be able to hit that try it free and upgrade your system to premium so you can follow along. But if you're getting this message here, it's a womp, womp, womp. You won't be able to follow along, but you should at least still be able to watch the recording or participate and ask your questions. So that was disclaimer number one. Number two, what exactly is the advanced roadmap? Well, many of you are probably very familiar with the timeline, right? So this is a regular board, right? We're not in the jar yet, but this is a regular sprint board. And when you're looking at your sprint board, you're very active over here on the left-hand side, right? And so you are probably very, very familiar with your active sprint, right? We use this every day. You're also probably very, very, very familiar with your backlog, right? Again, if you've been using Jira for some time, you should be very intimate here with your backlog and your active sprint because it's like the two biggest things we use in Jira, right? But have you ever clicked on the timeline? Let me know in the chat. How many of you, right? If you can just want to raise your hand here in the chat or just say, give me a thumbs up or just say yes, me, right, in the chat. How many of you use the basic timeline inside of Jira? Okay, because this basic timeline is, as I'm saying the word basic, pretty basic, right? And so this basic timeline, the way it works, right? So we got Brian, yep. We got Rodney saying yep. Nita saying yep. Okay, cool. So a few people are using this basic timeline, right? But the basic timeline, as I'm saying it over and over, is pretty basic. And there's some limitations. And so you might not know what those limitations are, but let me tell you, right? Number one, you can see an epic, right? So everything starts at the epic level. This is going to be very critical, folks, because we're going to go make some changes into our projects, and I'm going to show you where the advanced roadmaps really shines, right? But if you're just on free, standard, or even premium versions of Jira, you can leverage your timeline, but you're going to see the epic, and then you're going to see any associated stories, tasks, or bugs. And that's it. You don't see subtasks. If you have initiatives or initiative type above the epic, you won't see that either, right? So you are limited to just the epic and the story, and that's it. Next, the dates. You can put dates on your epics. So I can do this. Oh, it looks like this one already has dates, right? So I can put dates, as you can see here, on my epics. But what about my stories, right? What about these? Well, these dates are configurable, but you do need to change it, right? So out of the box, your story's dates, the start date. So if you want to create these colorful rectangles that tell you the start and the end date of a story, by default, they're going to be inherited by the dates of your sprint. Because at the end of the day, if you're truly an agile team, then that's technically the start and the end date of your stories, right? The team has autonomy to finish their work within the bounds of their sprint, right? And so therefore, this is going to basically restrict you to that. But there is a setting. You can go to your click up here on the configure timeline, and there is a date timeline setting over here where you can change it so that you can schedule your own start and due dates instead of the sprint dates, and then you can have a lot of flexibility into those dates, right? But again, it's still very limited, right? We can only do the stories, we can only do the epics, and we can only see stories and epics, and then the timeline breaks completely. It completely breaks the moment that you add another project into your board's filter. And so as long as your board's filter, this Cowboys board, as long as it's only for one project, you can use this. But the moment you want to see 2 projects or 3 projects or 4 projects, right? Then this completely cripples and falls flat on its face. And Jira basically tells you, sorry, you can't. Like it just, you don't even see the timeline. Like this view is gone. It doesn't show you anything. And so it's very limiting, right? It's not a very powerful way of doing this, right? So obviously this basic timeline, even though everybody has it, has some limitations. So we are going to talk about then the advanced roadmap, the advanced timeline, because Atlassian, again, if you're on premium or enterprise, you get something called a plan or a jar, or again, so many different names for it. But what's beautiful is that it takes all those limitations that I just talked about and it eradicates them. And then you get a lot more, right? So yeah, Jessica right here is basically saying it's annoying that it breaks with multiple projects. I know, trust me. But this is why you're watching this training, because I'm basically going to show you how to get around this limitation of like, hey, the moment you have multiple projects, because let's be honest, as project managers, we're sometimes not responsible for just one project, but our work exists in multiple places, right? So we want to build a bigger view. This is where it's going to shine, okay? So we're going to start off easy, and then we're going to get a little bit more advanced, and hopefully by the end of this hour, you're walking away as a professional. So here we are in the plans. We're going to create our very first plan. So you do need to, again, I'm sounding like a broken record, folks, but I want to do this because I don't want you guys to be mad in the comments here when you're like, Alex, it doesn't work for me. I'm like, if you are not on premium or enterprise or in the cloud, you're going to have some problems. So just keep that in mind, right? But if you're following along, we're going to click on plans up here in the navigation, and we're simply going to create a plan. Okay. And the first thing that you want to do is you want to give your plan a name. And this is usually where I take my first time out. This is usually where when I'm coaching a team, I go, hold up here, right? Because it's very tempting, right? It's very tempting. If you look back at my mobile dev project over here, it's very tempting for me to create a plan just for the mobile dev team, which is totally okay. That is totally fine. But that's like owning a Ferrari but driving it like a Prius, right? You don't necessarily get all the advantage of owning that Ferrari, right? And so while it is totally possible, totally doable to do one-to-one, right? One Jira project for one advanced roadmap, that's totally fine. But where the advanced roadmap really shines is in the ability to pull in data from multiple projects. So you have to think bigger when you're coming up with your names, because maybe the mobile dev team is one of the many teams or the many Jira projects that we're tracking. And so I like to name my plans after the project, not the Jira project, but like the program that you're on, right? So Ronnie says, I meant to say owning a Ferrari and driving like a Tesla. No, Ronnie, Teslas and Ferraris are in the same category for me. So anyways, so you want to think bigger, right? You want to think project, like project management project, You want to think program. You want to think like maybe even product, right? So you want to think bigger. Don't limit yourself to just the name of your Jira project. That would be, it's okay, but it's too limiting, right? And so if you look at my available projects, right? If I go back and look at Jira here, and you'll see that I have a couple of different projects. I have a design team. I have a facilities, HR, IT operations, right? I have a couple of these, and it doesn't make sense for me to just bring in just the mobile dev. So maybe I have a team that works on my banking application, as you can see here, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in I'm going to not call it mobile dev, but rather I'm going to call it mobile banking application. And so when I come to my plans, oh, there's one already there. I didn't even name that one, right? But when I come over here, I'm going to call it mobile application plan, right? And what this is going to do is it's going to let me think bigger, right? And just keep that in mind. Maybe you do it at a whole team level, the whole product level, the whole program level. I'm gonna call it program 2. I think there was another one already named there. Access is your next decision, right? So who's going to be able to see this? Is it private only to you, or are you going to share this with anybody? So this is all up to you. If you do go private, you can explicitly call out people that can access it. So it's all up to you. But I like to leave it open. Just keep in mind that people can make changes to this, and this is live data, and you're going to want to be careful there. Okay. And then the last thing that you want to do as you're creating your plan is you want to pick your sources, right? What issues are coming in? And you have 3 options. You can pick a board, a project, or a filter. I like to say this dumb joke. It's not a very good joke, but this is the way I like to tell people. Like a good haircut or a bad haircut, in your opinion, depending on which side of the fence you're on, right? But when you're cutting hair, it's much easier to cut hair off than to put it back on, right? Because once you cut it off, it's really hard to glue it back on, right? So I like to bring in as many issues as possible, have as big of a pool of issues as possible. And once they're in my plan, I like to then kick out what I don't want. Because what's worse is not having the issue because you didn't include it in a data in your source data, right? So that I think is a worse problem than having too many issues and filtering things out. So I like to bring in my project. This is my best practice, right? But if you only care about very specific data, then pick either the board or the filter, whatever is appropriate for you. Now I'm going to bring in my mobile dev, right? And then I'm going to add another project, and I'm going to see why. Oh, there we go. Okay. So then I'm going to remember I had another mobile one. I'm going to bring in mobile program. Now, Atlassian is always making changes. And if there's a criticism that I would have here is there used to be a button, a view up here, a little label that will tell you how many issues you're bringing in, because guess what? There is a limit. You can only bring 5,000 issues at a time. And if you exceed that number, then it won't work. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, unless I'm blind as a bat, I don't see it anywhere on my screen. For whatever reason, Atlassian got rid of that very, very helpful indicator that told us how many issues we're bringing in. So unfortunately, you're flying blind here, and you just have to hit the create button and hope that you're under 5,000. If you are, by the way, if you are over 5,000, it will yell at you. It will complain, and so you'll just have to remove a project or two. But keep that in mind that 5,000 issues is the limit. So keep that in mind. Okay. All right. Rebecca here says, I pull in a filter because that pulls in dependencies. Absolutely. I just like to pull in all the projects, right? So not only am I worried about just like that one project under the one very specific thing, but my filter, if it's referencing 2 or 3 projects, I just bring all 2 or 3 projects in. Again, I rather filter out from here than to not have enough data, but your mileage is going to vary. So you do whatever makes sense for you. So at this point, we've created our very first plan. Yay! I don't have sound effects. I need to get like a sound effect board. I think that'd be kind of critical to have, because cue in the little the one that's the children saying "yay" sound effect. So we have a plan, right? So yes, now you have stories without the parent. Maybe we're gonna get more advanced, Jessica. We're gonna get more advanced. We'll definitely get going here. But we'll get it hard. We'll make it more complex. But yes. Okay. So what exactly is an advanced roadmap? So a couple of disclaimers now that we got to do at this level. So an advanced roadmap sits on top of Jira. This is very critical because what I'm about to tell you here is very, very important, right? Anything that we do in the advanced roadmap is encapsulated to just that jar. Okay. All of the fields that we add, any changes, manipulations, edits, whatever we're doing, it's encapsulated just to the jar. It doesn't go to Jira. I'm going to show you how you push it in a minute, right? But just know that whenever you're making any of these changes, it is enclosed. It doesn't leave that jar until you hit a very magical button, which we're going to cover in a second. Okay, and this is critical because any changes you make in Jira, so if you're in your backlog or if you're in your backlog or your active sprint, right, or you're just editing an issue, any changes you do there, immediately those changes, after a refresh, of course, but immediately those changes move into the jar. So the jar will always reflect the latest and greatest data that is happening at the issue level. So any transitions, any new assignments, any new descriptions, title changes, right? Anything like that, immediately, again, after a refresh, will show up inside of the plan. But the same is not true going down. If you're in the plan, any changes you make up here do not show up in Jira until you push those changes in. That's very, very critical. So that's why I like to say that the jar sits on top of Jira. The second thing you need to know is that it's a single source of truth. You're always manipulating one data set. You don't have two copies of the data. You're not like Jira doesn't exist over here and the jar exists over there and they're separate. They're not. They're coming off of the same story or the same epic. They're just pointed by two different sources. Okay. So that's very critical to understand as well, because a lot of people freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm like duplicating data. Like, no, you're not duplicating any data at all. The jar is working off the exact same issue that the rest of the team is working on, even if they're not in the plan. So, two very, very important things that I want you to take away as a new beginner to maybe give you a peace of mind of what's happening. Michelle says, I'm thinking you need to have relevant permissions in the source Jira projects to push changes. Yes. So you absolutely, those are kind of like givens, right? But you still need to have edit access. You still need to have browse access to that project to begin with, right? So the permissions of Jira still dictate everything, right? So all you're doing is you're taking all those issues across multiple Jira projects and you're bringing them into one view. This is really where the jar is going to shine the most, right? So BGN says, yep, the first mistake that I made once I started to use the jar, I was doing some changes in the plan, but they didn't. Yeah. So, okay. So now we have our jar, right? So we've created our first jar. We have our timeline. What can we do here? So I'm going to show you some basic stuff, right? Some very, very basics. Number one, we'll kind of start off in the timeline. So automatically you land in the timeline. And of course, I need to share my screen to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about, right? So we're going to be in this timeline view here. And again, I wish Atlassian would give us different names, but it is what it is. And timeline, the basic timeline, advanced timeline, this is what we have, okay? So in this left section, let's start here in the middle, right? There's a lot of buttons. We're going to cover the important ones, right? But in here, what we have is we have a list of our epics and their associated children like this, okay? Now I'm going to collapse fields here. I'm going to switch over to timeline view and I'm going to collapse my fields. And what you're going to notice, right, when we look at this is that, let me collapse this first as well. You're going to notice that what I'm seeing on my screen right now is the exact same thing as what we were looking at when we're looking at the basic timeline. So if I were to compare this timeline, remember this colorful one we were looking at earlier? If I were to compare this against this, it's the exact same thing. Notice that these start dates are right around April 22nd. And notice that these dates, if I zoom in a little bit, are right around April 22nd, right? You even get more detail here, right? So it's the exact same data. And so you're probably asking yourself, okay, Alex, cool. So what about, like, why can't I just do it in the colorful one why would I do it on this blind one? Well, because this jar is going to give you a lot more data, okay? So what we can see is we can expand these issues right here. And so now we have all of our stories, right? And so we can see every issue. Not just because if I expand the exact same issues over here, right? You're gonna notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? I have the exact same stories, right? Everything's exactly the same, but this is where we're gonna shine or start deviating, right? This is where the jar gets more interesting. The jar has the ability to show me subtasks. So when I create sub 1, sub 2, right? I just made those subtasks in Jira. I'm going to go to my timeline. I'm going to refresh my timeline. You're going to notice that my basic timeline for that mobile 12 has this little icon that tells me, yeah, there's subtasks, but I can't see the subtasks. I have to click on them, and you'll see them over here. Right? That's it. But when I refresh my advanced roadmap, my jar, you will see, oh boy. Okay, filters. Let's do this. When you don't see your issues, the first thing you should be manipulating is your filters. So under filters, you have a section called hierarchy. This will dictate or control what issues in the hierarchy you see. So right now I just see the epic and the story. I can drop it down to the subtask, and now you will see that I can also see the subtask. What's even more important, right? Because obviously we're deviating right now from the basic timeline, but now I can also add dates to my subtasks. So that's not possible in the regular roadmap. So what this is basically telling you that at this level in the jar, you can do the entire hierarchy of your epic, your stories, and your subtasks, and all three of those can have their own independent dates. This is critical because you cannot do that anywhere else. So if you wanted to put dates on every issue type, this is the only place you can do it. It's the only way you're going to be able to do it. Okay. Next thing you need to know about what we're seeing over here is that everything here is rankable, right? And what I mean by that is you are all probably familiar with your rank over here, right? So if you go to your backlog, you should know this, right? That you can rank this. So I can move story 1 below story 2, and I can say story 2 is more important than story 1, and Jira is going to remember that order. Ranking is very powerful. Come back next week when I do my Jira for Scrum Masters course, right? We'll talk more about ranking. But in the advanced roadmap, I can also move that rank as well. I can change this, right? I can say, well, these are more important. These two over here are more important than the rest. And when I do that, Jira is going to remember that rank. But keep in mind, everything we've done so far, which is basically just reordering, it does not exist in Jira yet, right? And so this takes me to the next very important thing that you got to learn is once you've done changes in Jira, whether you're ranking, we'll talk about fields in a minute, but whatever you're doing in your jar, when you are done, very, very critical here, folks. Jira is going to remember, right? Jira is going to save this, so it's not going to delete anything. But you have to, when you're done, or periodically, you have to hit this review changes button. And what that does is it's going to basically summarize all the changes that you made, all the changes that you and someone else may have changed, or just on this particular timeline, right? So you get to pick. I usually just do my changes. I don't want to speak on other people's behalf, so I basically ignore other people's changes unless their changes are impacting my work, right? But I usually like to try to ignore others, and I just worry about my changes. But once you select whatever you want to push, then and you have a send update notifications, right? You can turn this on or off if you want to send notifications or not. Then you can hit that blue select save, and it's going to push it into Jira. So this order of 1, 3, 4 over here in my timeline is also now going to be 1, 3, 4. And so it's in the right order now in Jira. And what's great is if I go, hey, well, this 4 really needs to be at the top. If I do this in Jira and I come over here and I refresh my plan, my 4 is now on the top. So that's what I was talking about, this bidirectional sync. But notice that when I do a change in Jira, I don't have to push anything in. But if I were to bring like number 6 up, right? See, if I do a refresh over here, number 6 is still at the bottom. But the moment that I hit this review changes, tell me, yep, the rank changed, save them, that number 6 over here, again, after a refresh, is now at the top. So this is, again, how this jar is working with Jira. So hopefully this is clear. If you guys have, again, any questions, do please let me know. A question for after the stream. I have a 3-level jar because I want to display epics, features, stories. How can I display stories properly? Because on the plan they show as stories without parent. We will talk about that actually in this training. So we'll get to that. BGN. Vihana says, where are the start dates and end dates coming from? Great question. We will talk about that too right now. And then she says, can due dates? Okay, yep. Let's so let's talk about a couple of these questions, right? So now that we kind of learned what this middle section does, what we also have is fields, right? So we have these fields here, and what you have, right? We have obviously status, but we have something called the start date, and we have something called the due date. And these two fields, whatever's in here, this will control the bars over here on the right. So if I were to change, like if I change this one here, notice that these dates changed. It's very subtle. Watch it. It says October 29th. I'm going to move it to Halloween, right? And all I did was move the bar over to October 31st, and it moved. Or alternatively, I can click on this field and move it to the 25th, and the bar is going to change. The bar here is going to move over to the 25th. So there it is, October 25th. The question is, which two date fields control this, right? Here it's called start and due date, but we're going to get into a plan setting that is very important for you to know. So when we click on plan settings over here on the left, I think I might have done this a little too quickly, right? But if you go to plan settings, you're going to land automatically on the scheduling page. And the scheduling page has a couple of things that I want you to consider. Boy, that's a little Aston really want me to accept those cookies everywhere. Okay, so thing number one that you have to consider, there's a date section right here. In here, you get to pick your start date and your end date. And whatever date field you have in your Jira project, that will work. So by default, it goes to start and due date, but this can be any date field that you have. I will tell you a big caveat. Big caveat here is you can only have 2 dates to control these. And so a lot of people are like, well, we have like a target date and then we have like the actual date, right? Well, if you want that, unfortunately, Atlassian hasn't built that feature yet. I wish they would. I think that'd be a really cool feature. But for now, you may have to do 2 plans. One that is based on your target date and then one that's based on your actual date. But having them both won't be possible, at least if you want the bars. A compromise that I usually do is I will set the bars to be my target date so that that's real world of the targets that my team's estimating. And then I'll bring in my actual date as just a field and I compare it, right? And then I can see, oh, well, we missed it by a day or two or whatever the case may be. But this is where you pick any date field, any 2 date fields that you want. The other thing that's very important for you to configure here is your estimation. The jar allows you to bring in your story points. But if you're using story points, which many of you are if you're an Agile team, your estimates in Jira, in the jar, I should say, will not display as story points. And that is because for whatever reason, Atlassian puts your estimate to be defaulted as days. So this is original estimate if you're using that field. So days and hours are going to be for your original estimate. Story points are going to be for, you guessed it, your story point field. Okay? So that's another thing that you should change if you're using story points. Issue sources. I skipped over this, and I'm realizing that this is very, very important. Check this out, folks. Check this out. You see how we have a team-managed business project here? It's called employee onboarding. In the chat, what do you think? Do you think that I can add this employee onboarding project? Yes or no? What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. Take a wild guess. Venture out of your comfort zone. Can I add employee onboarding to my jar? Okay. The answer is yes. Right? So we can bring in team managed projects. So this used to be a limitation of the jar many, many moons ago, but the answer is yes today. And so this is one of those beautiful things where Atlassian is consistently changing things. It used to be that team managed projects were a no-go, but now they are. And so just keep that in mind that a team managed project is going to work for you here. Second thing to keep in mind is Here's that issues and plan. That's that magical number that Atlassian used to show you at the beginning, but now it doesn't. And I don't know why Atlassian would have gotten rid of such an important number here. But this is the place where you'll come and figure out how many issues do I have. So if this guy is hovering over 5,000 or right around 5,000, you're going to have a problem. So keep that in mind. The other thing that I want you to consider is there's an exclusion rule here. Folks, this is very, very important. Very, very important. I want you to pay attention if you're not paying attention. There will be opportunities. There will be scenarios, I should say, where you add all your issues, you bring everything into Jira, into your jar, but the numbers don't add up. And what I mean by that is in Jira, you show like 100 issues, but your jar only shows you like 70. And you're like, what the heck happened to those 30? What happened to those 30 issues, right? I want you to consider that when you move an issue to done, the jar will, after 30 days, after it's been done for 30 days, so that resolution date was 31 days or before, it will automatically hide it from your plan. And so don't freak out on me. If you don't see issues, right, if issues are missing, it's one of two reasons. Reason number one, the most likely culprit, is that those issues were resolved over 30 days ago, and the jar's just saying, you know what, I'm not gonna worry about it. So since I like to use my jars for quarterly planning, I think that they shine really, really well for quarterly planning. I like to do 100 minimum, so that you can see at least a quarter's worth of work, right? Because if you do 30, you're not gonna see everything in that quarter. So I like to do a minimum 100 days, but if you need the whole year, you can put the whole year. Your caveat's going to be that this number goes up and down depending on your retention policy. And so again, if you're hovering close to that 5,000 limit, you're going to want to be a little bit more prescriptive with your dates here. So I'll leave it to 100. This is a brand new Jira instance, so there's nothing in there that's that old, but that's why some issues disappear. The second reason why issues disappear is that there's a remove section button. And so sometimes, accidentally, by no fault of your own, you may come over here and accidentally click on this bulk actions button and accidentally remove it from the plan and accidentally click on that blue button. If you accidentally do all those things and you're like, well, shoot, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to bring it back. Well, there's no like resync button. There's nothing that's bringing it back. So you have to go to your plan settings. You have to go to your removed issues. And you will see them there. And you can select it and re-include it back in. So that's how we get issues to either show up or disappear from your board. Okay. Now, let's keep moving to the right because we're down to the last 20 minutes. And I would like to add a couple of other more advanced things, right? But under fields, we can bring in pretty much any field that we want. So there's a lot of fields that are out of the box, and sometimes you just got to click in here, and you'll bring in like your assignee, you can bring in your component, you can bring in your priority, right? And so this is just going to expand your fields, and you can click on the white space next to the field name, and you can collapse it, or you can click on it to make it bigger and show what you want to see. Now, let's just say that we wanted to reorder the fields. You would be tempted to do this, drag and drop. That ain't going to work for you. You have to click on fields, and you have to click on this little grid, and now you can move things around. And there, now you can set the fields in the order that you want. Number two, what if you have a custom field, right? What if you have custom fields? Well, you have to click on this Manage Custom Fields button here. This is going to take you to a pretty blank screen, which that means you have to click yet again to add a custom field over here. And you will be able to bring any custom field that is supported. There are certain unsupported fields. Those are mainly JSM related fields, like your assets, right? The group picker is not supported. Multiple user picker is not supported. Descriptions are not supported. And the date time picker is not supported. Date is, but not date and time. There's a couple of others. So if you are missing like cascading select, right? So if you can't find your field, sorry. If it's grayed out, sorry. Like you got to talk to Atlassian. But for right now, as long as it's not grayed out, yay, you can bring it in. And so all you got to do is just click on it and click add, and now it's available. Now you can actually search for it. You got to go back to your plan, and now you can click amount over here, and now you can add it as a field. So that's how we add custom fields. Okay. Now I'm going to collapse this and just show you this over here. And so for this view, right, as we stated earlier, for this particular plan, these bars show up based on that start and based on that due date. And so when you manipulate the start and due date here, the bars over here get manipulated. Now, why do we want the bars? We want the bars for a variety of reasons. One, from a project manager perspective, it gives us a really good view here, right? Like we can see what this looks like. Second, as Vihan is asking, when we create dependency and change the date of the first item, it won't automatically update. Yes. So unfortunately, Viana, the fine folks, Atlassian hasn't built this feature in. Why is beyond me, but it would be awesome if you can do this and go, well, this date slipped. Let's push this one out automatically. That would be awesome. Atlassian, if you're watching, give us that feature. I haven't met a single person that uses the jar that wouldn't love that feature to be there. Right? So, but unfortunately, Viana, right now, this red line, the fact that it's red, is the only indicator that we get that triggers us as the project manager to go, I got to push my dates out manually. So unfortunately, it is a manual move. Unfortunately, it's a manual move, but hopefully Atlassian one day we'll get that fixed. So sorry. That's as best as I can give you. The other thing though that I will tell you, be honest, if you have these red, you can click on this dependencies view over here, and you can see this that it's blocked by 22 days, and now you can at least go take action. Right now, you can go and discuss with your team and figure out a new date. But nothing here like Microsoft Project, right? Microsoft Project does it automatically for you. They say no more Microsoft Project. So someone says, can we see sprints instead of the dates in the plan? You can. If you go back to that plan setting and we go to the scheduling, the inferred dates are going to be off of sprints automatically. But my opinion, it defeats the purpose of the timeline, because the whole purpose of the timeline is that all the issue types get dates and really only your stories get put into sprints. So there's not a lot of value, right? Because your epics don't go into a sprint, your subtasks technically don't go into sprints, and even issue types above the epic don't go into sprints. So the sprints becomes a lot less valuable here. So if you're just worried about sprint dates, I would just use the basic timeline. That would be my suggestion there. Jose says, at the beginning you said that you prefer to bring the project and then cut out what you don't need. Oh yes, so let's talk about that. So what do I mean by cutting out what we don't need, right? So simple. So there's a filter button up here, and we can, maybe we want to see issues that are assigned to specific individuals only. So we can do this, right? And so now this is, instead of seeing everything, we just see the ones that are assigned to those specific individuals. Or a more common scenario is maybe we just care about issues in a specific release. Now, I don't think I have releases here, but we do have our, somebody stop me when you see releases, here it is, right? We have a releases field. So if you have a fixed version that you care about, you can just bring in just the fixed versions you want. Or maybe you just care about specific sprints, so you can bring in just the specific sprint. So this is what I'm talking about. In this filter section, you can weed out any issues that just don't meet your criteria, right? So it makes it a little bit easier. Second, keep in mind that, remember earlier, we can just select this and accidentally click on bulk actions and just remove them from the plan. So if there's something we just don't want to see at all, we can just go poof. You will never, go full screen for this. You will never, ever, ever delete anything in Jira through the jar. That's just not possible. If you ever delete something, it's because you are inside of Jira and you hit the delete button in Jira and you ignore the delete with permanent message. But removing things, filtering things out in your jar will never, ever, ever delete it in Jira. It just removes it from this view. It doesn't delete it from anybody else. So keep that in mind. If you're taking notes, highlight, underscore, put arrows, put stars. You're never deleting anything. So just keep that in mind. That's all you're doing there. The jar will not delete anything. Your admin also felt, yes. Again, but you don't have delete. So nothing's deleting here, guys. There's no delete button. You're just removing things from the plan. You have to go into Jira, and then you have to have the delete permission in Jira to delete stuff. Okay, so that's that. A couple of other things that you need to know, right? So we covered filters. So that's cool. Basically play around with these. This hierarchy, very, very important. Set this up correctly, right? Set this up so that you see the whole structure that you want. We'll talk about in a minute the rest, right? We have basic views here. The basic view, basically what this means is you can manipulate your filters and then you can save it as a view. That way the rest of your team doesn't have to always go in or you for that matter, need to go in and like always pre-select your stuff. You can just say, hey, here's the current sprints view. And you can just do that. All right, so that's what the views are for. The warnings. Warnings are a little bit more granular, but look at these warnings. There's not, this goes back to Vihana here, right? Where she was like, hey, these dates, there's dependencies and they don't align correctly, right? Well, you will at least get a warning. And Jira's gonna kind of give us like a little indicator. I don't think it does it over here anymore. Yeah, they got rid of it from this side. But the warnings over here are going to basically tell us, uh-oh, we have some issues. We have some problems, right? And I guess I can turn this on. There we go. And then I get my warnings over here, right? So this is a new feature that you can turn the warnings on or off. But look at these warnings because these warnings are critical. And when you hover over the warning, it will tell you exactly why it's complaining. In this particular case, we have an open issue that's past its assigned end date. This is a no-no. We have an issue that is not completed and it was due before today, right? And so big no-no here. So check out your warnings, turn this on or off depending on how much noise you want to see. The timeline list view, all it does is it either hides those bars or shows the bars. That's really all you get there. And then the view settings. This is very important. So we'll take another minute here, and then I'm going to do something a little bit more advanced, and then we're going to close this class out. Let me see. Let me make sure I don't have another meeting. I don't. Okay, so I have a minute or two. All right. So the view settings. A couple of things I want you to know. I'm going to turn these off. Okay. Number one, color by. The color by, if you remember how this basic timeline is pretty colorful? All right. See how it's all colorful here? Right, the colors here are, I'm assuming, dictated by the color of the epic, which, yes, it is. See how the color of the epic is like this teal baby blue? That'll control this one. That's it. That's all you get there. Well, over here, the color by is based on a lot of other things. So we can do it based on the component. If they all have the same component, right, you can actually add color, choose a color, and then choose your component. I don't have any, so this is useless. I can do it based on the epic. So now it's going to get the epic color. So now these colors are going to look and match just like the other ones. But unfortunately, like your stories all the same color. Or you can do it by issue type, right? So if you have, I can say all my stories are going to be green, right? And then I can say all of my bugs are going to be red, right? And then everything else is going to be gray, right? So you can add the colors based on that, and that'll start manipulating these lines here. So as I add dates to my plan, you can see that the stories are green, the epics are gray, and then where was my subtask, right? So if I want to add a different color to the subtasks, I can say, well, my subtasks are going to be, let's go teal, let's go yellow. So my subtasks are going to be yellow, right? So if I put dates on my subtask now, which now it doesn't want to, oh boy, come on. That's not what I want to do. Okay. Well, subtask would be yellow. In the interest of time, I don't have time to troubleshoot. And so if it's here, you can do it. If it's not here, sorry, you can't do it. Okay. Next, and more importantly, is the sort by. I like to leave rank. If you guys remember rank, it means that I can set the order of my epics, right? I can move my epics up and down. Let me deselect all this. I can move these things up and down like this. That's going to affect the rank. But more importantly, I can then set the rank of the stories below as well. And all these changes get pushed. And obviously my subtask. I can rank the whole thing. And basically what I can create is like a critical path where everything, well, not a critical path per se, right? But I can do the order of operations and say, team, work from the top to the bottom. Does reordering in the jar always mean ranking? Yes. In this particular view, when your sort is by rank. Unfortunately, if you're like, well, I don't like that. I want to do it by due date. Well, you can sort by due date, but now you lose the rank. So now I can't move dates. Jira will not let me move this because it's strictly based off this due date field. So as you can see, it's going to show me May, then July, then August, then October, right? It's going to give it to me in the right order based on that due date. Okay, as you can see here, these are in I don't forget if it's ascending or descending, right? But you can manipulate these dates and do the sort by the date, right? But you lose the ability to rank. So you have to pick one or the other. So I like to leave rank. Rank is my favorite. But again, you can pick any of the items here. Then you have the group by. The group by is kind of cool. If you have multiple people on your team, you can just group by assignees and you can see all the tasks, whether it's an epic, a story, or subtask, whatever it is, that's assigned to Alana. And so you can expose these and just group them by the assignee, or you can do it by the release. So if you have multiple releases, you can see how work is trending there. Or you can do it like maybe by the sprint or by the team, right? So any of these fields here are going to help you organize your work so that you can see what's relevant and important to you. So that's that. And then the last thing that I'll cover here are dates. There is a roll-up of dates and a roll-up of others. I'm going to check them both, and I want you to see this. This is kind of cool. This is one of my favorite features. I'm going to create a new epic under mobile dev, a new epic, okay? And underneath that epic, I'm going to create a new story. So story 1, story 2, story 3. Now, before I talk about the really cool functionality that I want to cover, one benefit, huge benefit that I totally forgot to mention is that one of the reasons why I love the jar so much is that I'm able to quickly, very, very, very quickly create stories and epics and all my issue types in just one couple clicks. More importantly, folks, if you're not paying attention, pay attention right here for 1 second. I'm going to remove this comment. More importantly, I can create a story under an epic in a different project. So I can go create the story for this team, and story 2 for this team. And this is important because as project managers, we aren't usually creating stories for just one team, but at the project level, we're creating all of the work for all of the teams. And so only in the jar can you do this, where you can hit that create button and put those stories in other projects. Because if I try to do it over here, if I go into an epic, let me open one up big, right? If I go into an epic in Jira and I add a child, right? I can pick whether it's a story, task, or a bug, but I can't, right? When I do this, it's going to automatically be created in this project. And I can't assign it to another team. I can move it now that it's created, but I can't in a brainstorming session say, hey, here's an epic and I have 5 teams working on this. Here's 10, 12 different stories that belong to different teams. That's impossible. But in the advanced roadmap, totally possible. So I think this is a phenomenal way of using the advanced roadmap. One of the biggest reasons why I use the roadmap is so that I can, as a project manager, assign the work as needed. Now, the next thing that I want to show you, and this is probably going to be the last thing because we are definitely running out of time here. We can set the dates of a story, 25 days, right? You notice how this bar up here has this dash? The reason that is because it is looking at the dates of the children and it's setting the date for that parent. And so this is grayed out because it's being rolled up. It's just telling you that the epic never got those dates, but based on the length of the children, that's the rolled up start and end date. So if your team gives the autonomy to your developers to come up with the schedule, then this works really well because now you can tell them, hey, come up with all the stories and then put the dates on them, and then I'm going to know how long it's going to take me to do an epic. Or the way I like to do it, doesn't require the roll-up, but the way I do it is I'll put the dates in the epic, and then the teams have to conform to those dates. So it's really a matter of preference at that point. BGN says this is amazing. That should go in the official Atlassian plans documentation as one of the better. uh, maybe I got to start making my own Atlassian documentation, right? Because this is why you come to these live trainings, BGN, right? Is to get this kind of data. You don't get this data anywhere else. This is all me using jars every day with dozens and dozens of teams and the lessons we learn here. Okay. One last little bit. Y'all notice that these don't have dates, numbers, and that's because these issues don't exist in Jira. Again, nothing that we do in the plan exists until we hit this magical blue button. And here you're going to say, look, I created a bunch of issues. And so when I do that and I push them in, that's when those issues are officially going to exist in their Jira projects. They're going to get a number. And so right now when this finishes, oh boy, I might have bitten more than I can chew here. There we go. Now they all have numbers. So now they officially exist. And now we can go plan them into sprints. Now we can go do whatever we want. Which, by the way, again, I'm out of time here. But if you bring in your sprint field and your release in here, you can then also assign things to people from here. You can set the statuses. This is a new feature too. You couldn't do this before. You can reassign it to somebody else. All right. So in this view, you can hit it. So BGN says, great question. What happens if there are any mandatory fields? They don't get created, I think is the answer. I have to test that. It's been a while. But if you don't bring in that field, if you don't bring those mandatory fields into your thing here, I do believe Jira is like, I don't like it. And I do believe that happens. I don't know that it's smart enough to do a pop-up, right? Because usually if you create a required, if you were to create a story over here and we have a required field, I do believe you get a pop-up that says, hey, fill out the required fields. But over here, I don't know that it's that smart. But yeah, so Bob is telling me you do get an error. So I didn't think that it would push through. Like it won't create, it shouldn't create the issue. All right, folks. Well, we're down to the last 3 minutes. So we're gonna have to do like a part 2. Maybe I'll have to do a more advanced one, right? But this is advanced roadmaps, jars for beginners here, for project manager beginners, right? So hopefully you got some value. We're just gonna switch back over to the slides here and just close things out. If you want to take your skills to the next level, follow me on LinkedIn, right? Send me a little message that that you took this class. Scan that QR code. There's a link in there that says follow me, so you can send me a friend request on LinkedIn. There's membership. So if you want to help support what I do, the cost that I do here, Atlassian doesn't pay me for this. So if you want to help support Bob, who just you saw answer, Roddy, who you've seen, myself, and another partner, Ed Gale from Ed Gale's Barbecue. We wrote a book, so there's a book on there. So if you want to show some support, go buy our book. I have free courses and paid courses on Udemy and through Salto. So if you want to, again, take your skills to the next level, scan that QR code. You'll see that. The memberships, though, back to that, the Jira Life has a membership tier. So if you want to become a member, become a Jira Amigo, we have different levels of membership tiers. Help support, right? We do this for fun because we love the Atlassian community. We love just dedicating our time. So if you want to, just again, show your support, there's that. I also have separate memberships. So if you have questions or you need one-on-one time, I do have that available in my buy me coffee. So again, everything's in that QR code. So if you need like one-on-one help or you just need a little bit extra hand holding, I do have availabilities for that if you need a little bit of help. I also have, if you've been seeing my rocking my I Love Jira shirt, although I don't think this is an exclusive one of two, right? But we do have a merch store. So again, if you want to help support the cause here, the channel, what we're doing here, check out the merch store. We have some nerdy stuff that you'll like as Scrum Masters and stuff like that. So those are pretty cool. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Subscribe to the Jira Life so this is the Jira Life. So subscribe to the Jira Life. Subscribe to Ape Tech. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out of your guys' busy day to be here. That QR code, though, will take you to everything you need to know. So thank you so much, folks. I appreciate you being here. And see you next week. I have another one next week on how to use Jira as a Scrum Master. So if you're interested in that, sign up for the class, and we'll see you next week. Bye.